converting fractions and decimals. So what we're preparing ourselves for is to be able to compare real numbers, which would include rational and irrational numbers, and to order and plot. And what I mean by ordering, put from least to greatest, and plotting, putting on a number line, being able to order and plot real numbers. Okay? So we learned yesterday about how to estimate square roots. Today, we're going to be learning how to change fractions into decimals and vice versa, which will help us be able to compare them. Okay. We're doing all of this without a calculator because, again, we're not going to be able to use a calculator on the test at the end of the quarter, the CQA. So there's some common fractions that I would think you either already have memorized or it would be a good idea for you to have memorized. So this is a 6th grade standard, knowing these common fractions. So we'll see if you actually remember, because we all know that just because you were taught how to do something doesn't mean you remember how to do something, right? So we'll start off easy. If you were going to write 1/2 as a decimal, what would it be? 0.5. Now I'm going to put a 0 in front of it because that's what I prefer. But 0.5 and 0.5 mean the same thing. You should also know what 1/4 is. What is 1/4? 0.25. You should know what 3/4 is. 0.75. Now those are really the ones that I absolutely expect everyone to know as you already come in here. Now there might be 1 or 2 people I see today that aren't 100% positive, but everyone for the most part knows those. There's 2 other ones though that are very common, and they're repeating decimals. One of them is 1/3. Good. 0.3 repeating. Now, you may or may not know that one, but that is a very common fraction to see, so it's good to just know it so that each time you don't have to find what it is as a decimal. If you memorize it, then you don't ever have to worry about it again. All right? And the other one that I think would be smart for you to have memorized is 2/3, which is 0.6 repeating. So again, 1/4, 1/2, 3/4, 1/3, and 2/3. So that's 5 fractions that you really should have memorized what they are as a decimal. Okay? All right, so the question is, if you had 0.25 repeating, how you would show it using a bar. And since the 2 and the 5 repeat, then you would make sure that your bar is over the 2 and the 5. Okay? Now, if we had something like 0.9131313, the 9 didn't repeat because we only had 1 of them. So when we put the bar over it, we're only going to put the bar over the 1 and the 3. So that would look like 0.9, and then your 13 is what's repeating. Okay? Yeah, the 9 was not repeating in this example. Okay. So let's figure out what we're going to do. I mean, this has only covered 5 fractions, the decimal form. So let's talk about what we're going to do if we have a fraction that we don't know the decimal form of. So some fractions, it's easy to turn the denominator into a multiple of 10. So sometimes, and this doesn't work for all of them, turn denominator into a multiple of 10. And I'll show you what I mean by that. I won't erase it. For instance, sometimes you'll already have something that has a denominator of 10, okay? So if you were reading this, you could say 7/10, but the correct way is 7/10. You might want to try the electric pencil sharpener if that one's not working for you. Or just borrow one of my pencils so that you're not too far behind. So again, 7/10. TENTHS. Now when you're making a decimal number, that's what it would be as a decimal, because the one place after the decimal is the tenths place. You knew that, right?
Yeah.
So 7/10 is the same thing as 0.7, because they're both in the tenths place. Same thing if we would have like 51/100. This would be 51/100ths. Which if we were writing that as a decimal would be 0.51, because that is the hundredths place. So you really aren't going to see anything bigger than 1,000, right? So we have tenths, hundredths, thousandths. So if it already has a multiple of 10 as the denominator, then it makes it kind of easy. You just put whatever your numerator is after your decimal. But if you don't have a denominator that is either a 10, 100, or 1,000, then we can make it so that our denominator is a 10 or 100 or 1,000 for a lot of them. For instance, if you had 2/5, could you write 5 as a 10? Could you make that into a 10? Yes. So if we're doing 5 times what is 10? 2. Then you would do 2 times 2, which is 4. That's called an equivalent fraction. You remember doing those before?
Yeah.
Equivalent fractions. So now that we have it as 4/10, let's just write it as a decimal, 0.4. 4/10. Now we couldn't have done it when we were leaving it just in this form of 2/5. We had to make it so our denominator was a 10. What if you have had 11/20? So let's not make this into a 10, but could we do 20 times something to get 100? All right. 20 times what is 100? 20 times 5 is 100. So that means we have to do 5 times 11 also, which is 55. So this is 55 hundredths. 55 hundredths. Now maybe you don't like this way. Maybe this way you hate fractions, you're not good with fractions, you don't feel comfortable doing it, you don't understand what I'm talking about. There is another method, and the other method works for every single fraction. It's just a little time consuming. So that's why I was showing you this way, because this way is kind of a shortcut for some of these fractions. Okay? The other way that's time consuming is using long division. Okay? So we're going to practice some of that now. I know. So our other method would be to divide. Now, if we are allowed to use a calculator, then life is good, because the only thing we have to do in a calculator is do the top number, numerator, divided by the bottom number, denominator. But when we aren't allowed to use a calculator, like this whole first quarter, we're not allowed to use a calculator, then there's no point me having you get out calculators right now, okay? We need to do this using long division. So sorry. So, let's start off with doing 4/7. Now you can see we can't use the other way on this. We can't do 7 times something to get 10. We can't do 7 times something to get 100. So that's why I have to use this division method on a problem like 4/7. Okay? So this means 4 divided by 7. You have to make sure that you put it correctly, like the setup correctly. The top number is what goes inside of your division box. So again, the top number goes inside of your division box. The bottom number goes outside your division box. So back a long way ago, when you were first taught how to do long division, your teacher said you could never have a smaller number inside. But then 5th grade, 6th grade, you were taught, oh yes you can. What do we have to do here so that we are able to divide? Thank you. So if we add a decimal after this 4, we can add as many zeros as we want to, okay? As many zeros as we want to or need to. We're going to start off with just having 1 0 there, though. And we're just going to bring this decimal straight up into our answer. Now, 7 does not go into 4. It goes into 4 0 times. But how many times could 7 go into 40? 5 times. What is 5 times 7? 35. So when I subtract, I get 5. Now, we don't want to put, or we are not allowed to put, remainder 5. That would be nice. We need to keep going. So if we want to keep going, remember I said you can put as many zeros as you want to on here. So we're going to need to bring down another 0. How many times can 7 go into 50? 7 times. 7 times 7 is, so you subtract and get 1. Now what? Bring down another 0. Then you get 10. So 7 can go into 10 one time. Oh man. What do you mean? You thought you were allowed to stop? You need to know how to keep going. Alright. So, alright, great. So 10 minus 7 is 3, right? Well, technically we could go until we see what's repeating, okay? But if you remember what I said before we ever started this lesson, the whole purpose of what we are doing is to know how to be able to compare fractions and order fractions from least to greatest. We probably do not need any more than 3 decimal places to the thousands place. So even though it does keep going and we'll eventually see that it repeats, we can just say, see how that's like an equal sign but it's wiggly? That means it's about, it's like an estimate, okay? It doesn't mean that it's exactly 0.571. So yes, that's fine if you want to just round and not do all the decimal places. You can. Why are you so confused? Well, it's just where you want to stop. Do I even, let's see, on here. I said to the nearest 100, so okay, second digit, fine. You want to try another one? I think we better. All right, then show me you know how to do it with 7 over 8. Shh, on your in your notes, silly. 7 divided by 8. All right, let's see how you did. 7 goes inside. 8 goes on the outside. 8 cannot go into 7, Avalie. So we're putting in a decimal. And we're going to start putting zeros after the 7. How many times does 8 go into 70? 8 times. So that's 64. And when you subtract, you get 6. Obviously, we need to keep going. Bring down a 0. 8 goes into 60 7 times. That is 56, which gives you 4. Bring down a 0, which gives you 40, so 5. So I'm okay if your exact answer is this, right? But if you were going to round to the hundredths place, which would be where the 7 is, that 5 says raise the score, correct? So that means that you're going to raise this 7 to an 8. So I would accept either answer here, okay? I'd accept either answer. All right, so I'm going to give you your assignment right now. And will you listen before you just blurt out? You have 6 problems to do. Now this assignment has 12 problems on it. So you're only doing the first 6 today, and then we'll do the other half tomorrow. So again, you're doing problems 1 through 6 today.